alarming rate. New York is seeing 70-degree days in January. Can the apocalypse be that far off?
You don't have to believe a whit in Mayan prophecy to fear that over the next few decades, within our lifetimes and the lifetimes of our children, this situation with climate change is going to go critical.
The Earth's average temperature is steadily increasing. And judging by the effects thus far, the end of the world may be a lot wetter than you might have guessed.
If the world lost all of its ice caps, we would see sea level rise eventually of about 200 feet. Now, that would fairly radically change the world's coastline. Most of Miami would be underwater, London would be threatened, Bangkok, New York. A very large proportion of the world's population lives very close to the coastline, so even what sounds like fairly small changes in sea level rise would displace tens of millions of people.
The streets of coastal cities would be turned into canals. Imagine reliving Hurricane Katrina on every coast and continent. But this time, the flooding would only be the first chapter in a downward spiral of apocalyptic chaos.
One of the things that makes people complacent about global warming is that they think, well, I don't live near the coasts. I'm not in some area that would be flooded. What do I have to worry about? Well, those rising sea levels translate, frankly, into a lot of other changes.
Armageddon will creep a little closer 1 degree Celsius at a time.
The temperature by 2100, by the end of this century, could potentially rise by somewhere between 1 and 6 degrees. 1 degree of temperature rise is essentially tolerable, whereas 6 degrees would be the wipeout of human civilization. We could see temperatures which haven't been seen on this planet since the end of the Cretaceous, 65 million years ago. And so most of the species which are on the planet now are not evolved for the kind of hot temperatures that we're now ushering in with global warming.
How severe our situation becomes depends directly on the global thermometer.
1 degree Celsius of temperature rise, we would see, for example, the extinction of most of the world's coral reefs. We would see also deserts spreading in the western half of the United States, and we would see a fairly widespread extinction of plants and animals which exist in the wild.
As the world's breadbaskets turn to tumbleweed, the pantries of the Earth will be increasingly barren.
We will see less and less food production. Even now, with the baseline temperature, we're in a world where 800 million people are malnourished and a few million people starving. If we move forward into 2030, 2040, where temperatures are rising by 2 degrees or so, then we'd probably see tens of millions of people starving.
The second degree of temperature increase will bring about catastrophic floods that even Noah would be hard-pressed to handle.
2 degrees, we'd see the Greenland ice sheet eventually disappearing, so we'd see much more rapid sea level rise. You're going to get more extreme floods, and you're going to get more extreme loss of life as a result of this.
As global temperatures continue to rise, not only will the atmosphere heat up, but the oceans as well, fueling more potent and punishing storms.
Hurricanes are one of Mother Nature's ways of being able to take heat out of the oceans and dump it back into the land and the atmosphere. So as the sea surface temperatures increase, we're going to be seeing more very strong hurricanes in the future.
Floods, famine, catastrophic storms, and this is only the beginning. The further we go up the thermometer, the more unlikely our survival becomes.
If you go on up the scale, 3, 4, 5 degrees, then we'd see the disappearance of most of the rest of the ice on the planet, and we'd see huge uninhabitable zones spreading across the planetary surface. If we drive temperatures up by 5 or 6 degrees Celsius, then we could see hundreds of millions, even billions of people starving to death. So we're talking a mass extinction.
Sound far-fetched? Consider this. In the last century, the Earth's average temperature rose more than half a degree, as more industrial nations sent carbon emissions spiraling into the atmosphere. And signs suggest that increase is speeding up. In fact, each year since 2001 is ranked among the top 10 hottest years ever recorded.
When we drive our cars and cook our food and turn on our lights, we use energy. And a lot of this energy comes from fossil fuels, from coal and oil, natural gas. When it's burned, it produces carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide blocks some of the energy leaving the Earth. It irradiates energy downward. It makes it warmer than if it wasn't in the atmosphere. This is the major cause of climate change for the past 50 years.
If you still need convincing that a warmer world is a bad thing, just take a look at our planetary neighbors. The Earth is surrounded by the corpses of climate change.
The planet Venus, the best example of a planet that was once an oasis of running water that is now bone dry because some knob got turned in its climactic system, rendering it completely inhospitable for life. We've got Venus to our left, Mars to our right, and here we are, Earth in the middle, treating our atmosphere like it'll always be here in the circumstances and in the temperature and climate that we've grown accustomed to.
If the alarmists turn out to be right and the world slowly cooks itself to death, our final days will be no summer picnic.
The worst case scenario, as I see it, is a kind of survivalist world where everybody's out for themselves and people are fighting over what's left. It's a world without any law and where people are killing each other and are really struggling to survive.
According to nearly every scientist who studies climate change, the only way to avert a global warming apocalypse is to stop the runaway greenhouse effect before it reaches the tipping point. But it may already be too late.
We're essentially undoing what took life millions of years to achieve, and we're undoing that whole process in the space of less than a century. Whether or not we reach the worst-case scenario of 6 degrees Celsius by the end of the century depends crucially on the decisions which humanity has yet to take about how far we are going to allow emissions to rise. It depends on the decisions which are being taken every day by 6.5 billion people.